taken on the burden for his passing. Is that true?
That is right.
There's something to do with a Barbie doll.
He used to stick the old school Barbie dolls in the cake.
Oh my God, you're giving me goosebumps right now.
The radio medium Laura Lee Show. Tune into your spirit every Tuesday at 4 p.m.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Mark Rosenthal, TGIF. Here's what's happening for today. Lots of sunshine, blue sky. It'll be nice. Temps 67 to 73. Overnight, mostly clear and cool. Temps in low 50s. Tomorrow, mixture of sun and clouds. It'll be mild. Temperatures mostly in the 70s. And on Sunday, variable clouds and sun. Slight chance of a shower. Temperatures mostly in the 70s. There are no major storms in sight. On the Money Matters Radio Network, I'm Mark Rosenthal.
Hey parents, you don't need the latest gizmo, slang, or clothes to be a perfect parent, because kids in foster care don't need perfection. They need you. For more information on how you can adopt, go to adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt Us Kids, and the Ad Council.
You're tuned in to Money Matters Boston, 1120 AM WBNW. This is WBNW 1120 AM, the Money Matters Radio Network. This is the Money Matters Radio Network, WBNW 1120 AM and W275CM FM, Concord, Boston. The Money Matters Radio Network.
Environmental nonprofit Ocean River Institute is working with communities to tackle climate change with nature-based solutions that feature slowing water down and building more soil with grasses and plants. Research indicates that people acting in their own neighborhoods can build an inch of soil in a year and slow sea level rise down by as much as 25%. Please visit oceanriver.org for more information on opportunities to make a difference and go the distance for savvy stewardship of a greener and bluer planet Earth.
Mark Vonner is the CEO of Veterans Development Corporation. Mark is a career military man, having served for nearly 20 years, and we are so thrilled to have him and his company as a key partner and the presenting sponsor of the DAV 5K Boston. Mark comes from a proud military family, including his father Victor and his brother Timmy. Mark talks often about how serving his country was one of the greatest achievements of his life, and that's one of the key reasons that he chooses to give back to this special community. Mark is honored to continue his legacy that his father started when he built Veterans Development Corporation. Working to help many disabled veterans and their families has become a lifelong goal for Mark, and it's why he's taken the time to fully support the DAV Department of Massachusetts. You can join Mark Vonner and Veterans Development Corporation and help our great American heroes today by making a donation or becoming a sponsor. Simply visit dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
Hey, listen, are you a 50-year-old person looking for term life insurance? Then you need to talk to Bob. Bob specializes in helping people find $1 million or more of term life insurance for a couple of $100 a month. Look, you need to know there's a price war in the term life insurance business, and you may be paying too much. Call Bob, and he'll shop and see how much money he can save you. Look, this could be the last term life insurance policy you ever have. Your rates are guaranteed for the next 20 years. That's right, guaranteed level rates for the next 20 years. And if you're a smoker or your health is not perfect, Bob has great rates for you too. So for $1 million of term life insurance coverage for a couple of $100 a month, call Bob right now. 800-965-7987. 800-965-7987. 800-965-7987. That's 800-965-7987. Paid for by Term Direct.
Hi, this is Chuck and Mike from the Armstrong Advisory Group, and our guide this month is titled Inflation and Your Retirement Plan. Mike, why is it so important for retirees to account for inflation in their planning?
Yeah, massively important, and I think any retiree over any course of history will tell you that. And when you experience inflation, when you're on a fixed income, it's tremendously difficult. But even small changes in the rate of inflation, or seemingly small ones, can really lead to massive changes. For example, if you're facing 2% inflation, that means that prices roughly double every 35 years. If you're looking at 4% inflation instead, those same prices double only in 17 years. A huge change to your budget.
And obviously, this also then influences your overall spending habits and your withdrawal rate over time. These are things that you have to account for in your planning. You can't just assume that you're going to necessarily see the same kind of inflation that you've seen previously in retirement.
Yeah, look, I think generally speaking, over the course of the last 20 years, while there have been massive drawdowns in equities, the inflation figure has remained relatively stable. If you're worried about something that could look different from that over the course of the next 20 years, then it's important to really consider what that would mean for you.
Our guide this month is titled Inflation and Your Retirement Plan, and there are two ways you can request it. The first is by calling 800-393-4001, or you can request it online at armstrongadvisory.com. That phone number again is 800-393-4001, or request the guide online at armstrongadvisory.com.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services.
This is Michael Valila, Adjutant of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. We pride ourselves on being able to support veterans in their time of greatest need, ensuring they receive the protections they deserve. For over 100 years, the DAV of Massachusetts has helped thousands of veterans with housing, transportation, and medical assistance, and you can help too. Please visit dav5k.boston and make a donation today. That's dav5k.boston.
The Financial Exchange is produced by Money Matters Radio and is hosted by employees of the Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. All opinions expressed are solely those of the hosts, do not reflect the opinions of Armstrong Advisory or anyone else. Investments can lose money. This program does not offer any specific financial or investment advice. Please consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong Advisory and the advertisers heard on this program do not endorse each other or their services. Armstrong and Money Matters Radio do not compensate each other for referrals and are not affiliated. This is the Financial Exchange with Mike Armstrong and Paul Lane. Your exclusive look at business and financial news affecting your day, your city, your world. Stay informed and up to date about economic and market trends, plus breaking business news every day. The Financial Exchange is a proud partner of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. Help us support our great American heroes by visiting dav5k.boston and making a donation today. This is the Financial Exchange with Mike Armstrong and Paul Lane.
Happy Friday and welcome back to the Financial Exchange. It's Mike, Paul, and Tucker with you on a Friday after a big inflation report Thursday, but frankly, all of this news this week getting buried given the murder of Charlie Kirk. There's a press briefing going on as we speak. At the moment, it looks like in Salt Lake City on that subject. But to that end, I think in part because of that, any of the financial news that has come out this week, Paul, has not really been covered by the press. And I was speaking with Matt Gagnon this morning out of Portland about this subject, which is for good reason. This has not been the most important thing that has mattered, and yet we have markets sitting here again at all-time highs. The Dow rallied above 46,000 for the first time ever yesterday, and we have a Federal Reserve meeting coming just next week, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Next week coming, the Federal Reserve meeting. So a lot to cover here in the world of finance, markets, and the economy, and we'll be getting right to it. But I think we start off with the recap yesterday again. If you did not see it yesterday, we got a inflation reading that was not extraordinarily bad. It was elevated, but not elevated enough to really reverse any of the thinking on the Fed's next moves. We also got a weekly jobless claims number that came in hotter than expected, meaning more people leaving those jobs probably involuntarily. And again, the way that we summarized those from yesterday, Paul, was both of these in and of themselves for one reading are not terribly concerning, but could represent a new trend line that is worth keeping an eye on. Nonetheless, a lot of this bad news for the economy has meant good news for markets, and some of that's logical, some of it's not. But nonetheless, I think all of the data this week either solidified the perspective that the Fed should be cutting rates, or at least did not thoroughly negate that perspective that, the Fed should be moving forward with rate cuts at this stage. And so all expectations are that we are a go with at least a 25 basis point cut when we meet with the Fed and their press conference next week.
Yeah, I think the biggest subject this week is really where the Fed sits at this point. We've talked about on the show a lot. They have two primary responsibilities, which is price stability, that's inflation, and then the labor market. And what's so interesting about this week where the Federal Reserve is positioned is that it is very clear that there is certainly a weakening in the labor market. You could argue how severe that is, but it would be hard to argue that we're not seeing at least a trend of the labor market weakening over the course of the last 6 to 12 months or so. Meanwhile,
let's talk about that for a minute, because I don't know that everybody is experiencing that. I think if you are listening here in the Boston area, you might be understanding that quite a bit, because unemployment rate in Massachusetts is like the 10th worst in the state and has changed pretty dramatically since the beginning of the year. But if you're in New Hampshire, or if you're in the Midwest right now and listening, you might not be feeling that weak labor market. What are the indications that you're using, and what did we see? There are big revisions this week, for example, about a weakening labor market.
Yeah, so the unemployment rate's up to 4.3%. We saw from March of 2025 through March of 2024, they went back and revised down 911,000 jobs were taken away in terms of growth over that period of time. And then from a sector perspective, if you look at the more recent months' data, we're now averaging in around, with that revision, it's somewhere around 74,000 if you look back at the span of the last 12 to 18 months. From a sector perspective, on the white-collar jobs, those business services kind of positions, you're seeing a lot less hiring in those areas. Really, what's only been propping up employment growth in general has been healthcare services. That has been really the main sector where we've seen growth. But otherwise,
because we're getting old.
Yeah, there's a lot of healthcare spending, which we'll talk about later in the show today, because healthcare costs don't seem to want to go down. But that aside, just a labor market in general that has been weaker because of those indicators that we're seeing. It's not a tremendous amount of layoffs or firings that we're seeing just yet, but certainly the job growth is slow. There's no way you can argue that.
Yeah, that piece is true. The complex, to get to your point here, Paul, it's really unclear how many jobs we need to create on a monthly basis in order to keep the unemployment rate low. But what is fairly clear is that if we only create 20 to 50,000 jobs per month, whether the unemployment rate goes up or not, it's going to be tough to see economic growth. Yeah. I think that's where I land is, unemployment rate could stay down here in the 4.3% range, but if we keep creating jobs at such a slow pace, then consumer spending won't increase, people won't be able to move from job to job and see those wage increases, and so we're going to be kind of in a languishing point when it comes to the labor market, regardless of that unemployment
rate. So that's one side of the equation, and what makes it more fascinating this week is that we have the inflationary picture, which you just mentioned, that is trending in the other direction, where inflation has been ticking up from the low that it reached back in April on a year-over-year basis. It was sitting at 2.3%. We now just had a report that came out at 2.9%. Obviously, the Fed's target is 2%. That has been a huge concern this year, and probably what we've spent more time focusing on this year from our show and other news publications is concerns about tariffs leading to inflationary pressure. And really what the Fed has come out and committed to is their focus is now on the labor market. This inflationary report was not so bad that would cause a shift in plan here. So really what we're going to see from this rate cut, very likely coming next Wednesday, is a 25 basis point cut and a Fed that is more focused on the employment market. And what is puzzling to me a little bit, which we can get into, is the stock market rallied pretty significantly off of the news yesterday on that inflation report, which I wouldn't have rated as a tremendous report. I wouldn't say it was disastrous, but because of that premise of lower rates, which can impact asset values positively, we had a market that rallied even against a backdrop that I would say is kind of mixed at the moment.
Yeah, it is, but here's where I always land when we're talking about economic data and how it's going to affect the Fed. And what makes it really, really difficult to take a market's perspective on all this is you have to remove yourself from what I would do in this scenario and put yourself in the role of Jay Powell and those other 11 voting members of the Fed and say, okay, I might view things this way, but what would Jay Powell and what would the Federal Reserve Board and committee be doing in this case? And all evidence points to a Fed that over the last 5 years has been far more interested in what's happening in the labor market and concerned about how they can improve that labor market story than what is happening in the inflation side of things. We saw it in 2022 when they were very late to the game, and I see no compelling evidence why we wouldn't see it again this time. So let's take a quick break here. When we do come back, I want to speak a little bit more about that inflation report. What were the bad items? What were the things that were really driving up prices? And why might the Fed be willing to look through all of that for a lower interest rate environment? That's next here on the Financial Exchange.
Find daily interviews and full shows of the Financial Exchange on our YouTube page. Subscribe to our page and get caught up on anything and everything you might have missed. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network. This fall, why just watch the leaves change when you could watch the sunset over turquoise waters? The U.S. Virgin Islands are your perfect fall escape. Set sail on the sparkling blue sea, snorkel colorful reefs, kayak through calm lagoons, or try to reel in the big one with world-class sport fishing. Then, explore Charlotte-Amalie, the capital of St. Thomas, with its historic streets and duty-free shopping. Ferry to St. John's Virgin Islands National Park for hiking and secluded beaches. And finally, experience the culture, festivals, and rum of St. Croix. 3 incredible islands, countless experiences, and something for everyone to enjoy. With easy travel from New England, no passport required for U.S. citizens, and no money to exchange, paradise is closer than you think. So why wait? This can be the season you fall naturally in rhythm with the heartbeat of the islands in America's Caribbean. The U.S. Virgin Islands. Plan your getaway now at visitusvi.com. That's visitusvi.com.
Mark Vonner is the CEO of Veterans Development Corporation. Mark is a career military man, having served for nearly 20 years, and we are so thrilled to have him and his company as a key partner and the presenting sponsor of the DAV 5K Boston. Mark comes from a proud military family, including his father Victor and his brother Timmy. Mark talks often about how serving his country was one of the greatest achievements of his life, and that's one of the key reasons that he chooses to give back to this special community. Mark is honored to continue his legacy that his father started when he built Veterans Development Corporation. Working to help many disabled veterans and their families has become a lifelong goal for Mark, and it's why he's taken the time to fully support the DAV Department of Massachusetts. You can join Mark Vonner and Veterans Development Corporation and help our great American heroes today by making a donation or becoming a sponsor. Simply visit dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
Are you wondering where the economy is headed? GDP is growing, but tariffs, inflation, and job numbers are making headlines. Interest rates, housing costs, and policy changes are impacting all of us. Even AI is changing how markets move. Hi, this is Chuck Zada from the Armstrong Advisory Group. We're hosting 2 financial seminars this fall to help you make sense of it all. Join us at Margaritaville Resort, Cape Cod on October 9th or at the Showcase Superlux in Chestnut Hill on October 16th. To reserve your seat, call 800-393-4001. We'll break down the economic trends, market risks, and smart strategies you need to plan for retirement and beyond. Diversification, preparation, and smart decisions are several of the keys to navigating uncertainty. Register today by calling 800-393-4001 or on our website, armstrongadvisory.com.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services.
Hey, listen, are you a 50-year-old person looking for term life insurance? Then you need to talk to Bob. Bob specializes in helping people find $1 million or more of term life insurance for a couple of $100 a month. Look, you need to know there's a price war in the term life insurance business, and you may be paying too much. Call Bob, and he'll shop and see how much money he can save you. Look, this could be the last term life insurance policy you ever have. Your rates are guaranteed for the next 20 years. That's right, guaranteed level rates for the next 20 years. And if you're a smoker or your health is not perfect, Bob has great rates for you too. So for $1 million of term life insurance coverage for a couple of $100 a month, call Bob right now. 800-965-7987. 800-965-7987. 800-965-7987. 800-965-7987. That's 800-965-7987. Paid for by Term Direct.
Miss any of the show? Catch up at your convenience by visiting financialexchangeshow.com and clicking the on-demand icon where you'll find all of our interviews and full shows. This is your home for the latest business and financial news in New England and around the country. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
The Financial Exchange is a proud partner of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. Registered now for this year's DAV 5K on Saturday, November 8th at Castle Island before it sells out. Slots are going quickly, so if you'd like to take part, please visit dav5k.boston to secure your spot. Your participation helps provide vital services like free transportation, 2 medical appointments, and safe housing for single veterans and their families. Sign up or donate today at dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
So, Paul, we're talking about the labor market and inflation. We're talking about it because that's all we talk about on the Financial Exchange. I'm joking, but we do have a Federal Reserve meeting early next week, and markets seem to be anticipating a rate cut. And I don't mean seem to be. They are anticipating a rate cut.
The question is how big, really. I mean, well, it's pretty clear it'll be the quarter basis point.
It seems to be, yeah. There's currently, according to the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, where you can look at prediction markets on interest rate cuts or hikes, there is a 92.4% likelihood of a quarter percentage point cut. There's a 7.5% chance of a 50 basis point cut. So the reason why I think quarter is the most likely scenario is because of these underlying inflation concerns. But I got to say, I think that the Fed will be willing to look through them a little bit. The Journal has a piece today on 12-month price changes from where they were a year ago. These are always interesting to look at. Coffee topped the list here in terms of August changes, up 21% from last year.
Almost spit out my coffee when I read that.
Sucks. Auto repair up 15%. That's likely, again, tariff related, as is coffee, by the way. This stuff comes from Vietnam and Brazil, both of which are facing double-digit percentage rates on tariffs. We don't grow that here in the United States. Ground beef up 13%, not really tariff related. Apples up 10%, bananas up 6%. 6.6, used vehicles up 6, tools and hardware up nearly 6, oranges up 5. There's a lot of other price increases in here too. Furniture, paper products, a bunch of other food categories. But a lot of this stuff is seeing some upticks. Others are really not. Women's apparel is down in pricing, and I can't really explain that, to be quite honest, which is why I don't think you actually want to focus on each of these individual categories. But if I am the Fed and I'm taking a look at yesterday's inflation report, which, again, if you missed it, prices were up 2.9% year over year, 0.4% for the month. When you strip out the food and energy impact, prices were up even more year over year because generally energy prices have been coming down over the course of the last year. Stripping those pieces out, prices are up 3.1% and 0.3% for the month. These are underlying trends that are pretty high, but if I'm looking at this report, I'm looking at it and I'm saying, okay, we've got services prices that are on the move. Yes, that is a concern, but frankly, the pace at which services are going up is right around what's normal. What is changing here is that goods prices are moving up right now. If I'm them, I'm blaming this on tariffs. If I'm the Fed, I'm blaming...
the Fed,
if I'm the Federal Reserve, if I'm Jay Powell, I'm blaming these price increases on tariffs because, honestly, look through the list. Most of those big price upticks could be blamed on tariffs. They could also be, changes to farming because of immigration and other factors. But if I'm the Fed, I'm probably not banking on that. I'm thinking this is because of tariffs. And if I really care about what things look like a few years from now, because that's what my policy affects, I don't really care about the tariff impact. Why? It's going to drive up prices once. Mm-hmm. And then, a year from now, if I'm the Fed, I don't exactly expect coffee prices to be up another 21%. We've already built in that tariff effect. And if anything,
the year-over-year comps should look better.
You could have more tariff negotiations. Maybe Brazil's not paying 50% tariffs. All of these different things. Heck, it's with the Supreme Court right now. You don't even know if it's going to be
another
overruled
variable.
entirely. So I think the more and more I've considered all of this, am I concerned about underlying inflation and what it will look like a few years from now? Yes, I am. I think it could be an overlooked variable that is not being paid enough attention to. But if I'm putting myself in Jay Powell's shoes and the Fed's shoes, I am embarking on a rate cutting cycle that probably lasts more than one meeting. I do think with the trend that you're seeing in employment right now, all else equal, you're cutting rates by a little bit at this meeting, and you are indicating that you're going to go further at the next several.
That makes sense. You're throwing all your resources at employment. I can see the logic behind the decision to sort of put inflation on the back burner for the moment and recognize that the labor market is a more near-term threat for the economy. But I don't love the idea of shrugging off inflation, but I can get the logic.
Yeah, I mean, they were wrong to shrug it off 3 years ago. And that's the piece that gives me real pause is they completely misread everything 3 years ago when it came to inflation. And they are basically, if they just, again, if you buy the argument that I just made, then you're buying the transitory argument once again.
Right.
And that word is taboo now.
Yes.
How many of us were saying transitory?
Oh my gosh.
Back in 2022 when it came to everything that we were facing. And guess what? It wasn't all that transitory. And maybe this moment isn't either, but that is the word that they are not going to use because of how taboo it is. But it's effectively, if you read through the arguments that they're making, that's what they're saying is, look, it's tariff related. We'll see these price increases. There'll be a one-time adjustment to prices, and then things will settle back in at our normal 2% target, and we're willing to look past all of that. The obvious risk to all that is they're wrong.
Yes.
So do you want to talk about how they could be wrong?
Sure.
When it comes to all this, like how could they be missing the boat here? Let's play out a completely different scenario, right? The scenario for the last few months has been tariffs are in place. AI is playing some role in the labor market that's making employers less interested in hiring a boatload of people. I have a personal belief on that it's not because they're actually having effective usage of AI. It's just that they want to signal to markets that they're having an effective usage of AI, and the best way to do that is not hiring people.
Yeah, I think it's more the economic uncertainty that businesses aren't expanding their labor force more so than AI taking jobs.
Agreed. So they have been hesitant to hire. That's led to it's not a weak labor market. 4.3% unemployment isn't really a weak labor market, but it's been pretty low rates of hiring. They've been hoarding labor. They have been holding off on any big projects other than artificial intelligence expansion. That's the only thing that people have been willing to invest in. But housing has been taking a side. And so the question would be, okay, if you're buying that inflation is just transitory and it's going to have a one-time price adjustment because of tariffs and then die off, how could they be wrong? Well, let's play that through. Tariffs could get overruled here in the next coming months when it comes to all of this.
Yep.
There's been $150 billion worth of tariff revenue collected just since March.
Mm-hmm.
This economy looks really different if you have to go refund $150 billion to every company in the United States.
Right.
It looks a lot different. If those tariffs go away, companies start buying up everything that they can to get it in the United States once again, like we saw earlier this year. Why? Because guess what? If the Supreme Court does overrule the president on tariffs, they're not going to just turn away and say, okay, we're done. They're going to go and they're going to go try and create another law and use another justification for tariffs that takes a little bit longer. And so you're back to that uncertainty. But in the short term, you potentially have companies buying up everything that they can. The last piece on all this, we have a labor market that has been stuck. Could something unstick it in some way, shape, or form? I'm just not sure what that looks like, but you sure do have a lot of money being spent on this artificial intelligence investment. Should that turn into something on the hiring side that ticks up hiring? Maybe it's because companies are facing less uncertainty when it comes to tariffs. Maybe it's something else entirely. But anything that kind of changes that labor market story, that could change the entire trajectory of all of this and drive things higher. And then finally, the whole thing that they're doing is lowering interest rates. That is entirely designed to spur economic activity. So again, I don't I don't really think that they are wrong on this one. I tend to believe that they are right to look through the current inflation that we are seeing in that 3% range. But they do have this undercurrent of inflation that has not existed in this economy for decades. And I hope they don't completely ignore it.
Yeah, my last piece would be that the inflation increases, maybe they get a little more substantial than we anticipate because of just the slow bleeding out of how they've been phased in, and maybe that causes inflation to run away quicker.
Quick break. We got Wall Street Watch coming up next.
Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at TFE Show. Breaking business news is always first, right here on the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
Sometimes we know what's next. Other times, it's impossible to know. Life can change in an instant. Don't be caught standing by the next time someone's heart stops. Knowing CPR gives you the ability to act and takes you from bystander to lifesaver. CPR is a life-saving skill. Join the nation of lifesavers today by learning CPR at heart.org/nation. National support for CPR education provided by Elevance Health Foundation.
It happens all over Massachusetts.
Can you tie my shoes?
In every home and every community.
Be careful on your bike.
Learning can happen anytime, anywhere.
We'll see you at practice this weekend.
And no matter how learning takes place in your family's life, DESE is there as your partner. The Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Never stop learning. Find out more at mass.gov/back-to-school.
Sponsored by the Massachusetts Department for Elementary and Secondary Education.
New Englanders love the Caribbean, and now there's a Caribbean travel channel available for you to learn all about Caribbean culture while you're planning your next trip to your favorite island. The TravelShare.com marketplace is loaded with information about the arts, festivals, food, and music throughout the Caribbean, and is an interactive website featuring daily travel deals to any island of your choice. Book your next Caribbean vacation on the most comprehensive travel channel for the islands, TravelShare.com. That's TravelShare.com.
This is Michael Valila, Adjutant of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. We focus on the people returning from service, not their specific illness or injury. Our number one goal is to make sure our veterans have the necessary services they need, be it physical, emotional, or financial, so that their transition can be seamless. You can help our great American heroes as well by making a donation today by visiting dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
Hi, this is Mike Armstrong from the Armstrong Advisory Group. One of the biggest risks to retirement isn't just market volatility, it's longevity. People are living 25 to 30 years after they stop working, and that gives inflation plenty of time to work against you. At just 3% inflation, your expenses double in about 23 years. Add to that the fact that healthcare costs typically rise faster than general inflation, and your later years could be your most expensive. Without a plan, that combination can put real pressure on your savings. That's why we've put together a brand new guide called Inflation in Your Retirement Plan. The guide shows you ways to balance longevity risk with rising costs and strategies that may help you make your money last through decades of retirement. Call 800-393-4001 to get your free copy today. 800-393-4001, or you can request it online at armstrongadvisory.com.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services.
This is Tucker Silva with the Financial Exchange Show, and I'm joined today by estate planning attorney Todd Lutzke, a partner with the law firm of Cushing & Dolan with a master's in taxation. And today we're talking about choosing beneficiaries for your IRA. Todd, what is the best way to deal with qualified retirement plan assets, and can they be transferred to these irrevocable Medicaid trusts?
So this is a tough asset in general. When you're dealing with retirement plan assets, it's difficult from an estate planning standpoint or a Medicaid planning standpoint to deal with them. Why? Because they have both an income tax component and an estate tax component, right? They're taxable when you take them out, and when you die, they're subject to your estate tax. So the general way to do this would be, one, you can name the spouse as the beneficiary of the IRA, or you can name the kids the beneficiary of the IRA, or sometimes you can name the trust the beneficiary or the estate the beneficiary. But it all depends on the size of your estate, the size of the IRA. But the one thing you really can't do is you can't take the asset and transfer it to the irrevocable trust or revocable trust while you're living. Otherwise, it will create a income taxable event. So tough to plan for those in advance unless you name the estate the beneficiary.
Educate yourself about the estate planning process. Request your free copy of Todd's brand new guide called Why Name Your Estate an IRA Beneficiary right now by calling 866-848-5699. That's 848-5699, or you can request a copy from their website, legalexchangeshow.com.
The proceeding was paid for, and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing and Armstrong do not endorse each other and are not affiliated. Time now for Wall Street Watch. A complete look at what's moving markets so far today, right here on the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
Well, markets are in mixed territory, putting a bow on a week filled with inflation and labor data ahead of the Fed's anticipated meeting on tap next week. Right now, the Dow is down by 0.3% or 144 points lower. S&P 500 is edging only 3 points higher. NASDAQ up 0.3% or 82 points higher. Russell 2000 is down 0.6%. 10-year Treasury yield up 5 basis points today and is now at 4.064%. And crude oil up nearly 2% higher, trading at $63.45 a barrel. Well, big news in the media world this morning after CNBC reported that Paramount Skydance was readying an offer for Warner Brothers Discovery. However, as of Thursday, Warner Brothers had yet to receive an offer, but a bid could come as soon as next week. Yesterday, Warner Brothers stock soared 28% on the news and is up another 9% today. Meanwhile, shares in Supermicro Computer rising nearly 3% after the AI tech firm announced it is now delivering equipment powered by NVIDIA's Blackwell Ultra technology in volume to customers. Elsewhere, OpenAI and Microsoft reached a deal to extend their partnership despite a summer of tough negotiations. Microsoft shares are up by about 1%. Software company Adobe raised its annual outlook for the second time this year after reporting better than expected quarterly results. However, that stock is down by about 1%. Furniture retailer RH trimmed its annual outlook as it struggles with higher tariff-related costs and uncertainty. That stock falling over 1%. And after surging 78% yesterday, recent meme stock Open Door Technologies is retreating over 7% today. I'm Tucker Silva, and that is Wall Street Watch.
According to St. Louis Fed, who sources their data from Realtor.com, there are currently 1.099 million homes for sale in the United States. That would include condos and other types of listings. We are officially on the cyclic or the seasonal downward trend that you get towards the end of the summer when it comes to home listings. We peaked out at just over 1.1 million homes back in July, and we're assuming that we follow the same trend that we have for almost every year in modern history when it comes to home sales, we will start to see those home listings. We will start to see those slide into the fall season here as people delist their homes ahead of Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays. To give you a point of comparison, back in August of 2019, there were 1.235 million homes for sale. So still a far cry from where we were, but obviously getting much closer to a inventory state that is more similar to where we were back in 2019. That varies considerably state to state. We've talked a lot about that. In Florida, you have a much weaker housing market than you did in 2019. In Connecticut, you have a one that there's so few homes for sale. I don't know how anyone even buys one. The Wall Street Journal asks if the new mortgage rate scenario that we're seeing now might come to the rescue of the housing market, and my answer is it all depends on timing. So in terms of where we are right now, your average 30-year fixed rate is sitting at 6.25. That probably means that there are some folks out there that are getting close to under 6% for those very high credit ratings that are putting 20% down on a conforming mortgage, you might be getting into the 5.99 range on that. The average 15-year fixed, you're looking at 5.7%. And so the question, therefore, is, will that be enough to spur a big fall housing season, or do we really need to see what happens next spring when it comes to all of this? My sense is this is not enough to move a bunch of potential buyers off the couch here.
No, you have to lean on the seasonal trends for that. I mean, so much of it is driven by once school gets back in and going, you don't really have a tremendous amount of volume going off in the fall, winter period. But if the rates were to stay in around this level or perhaps lessen and break that 6% barrier, I think that is a big psychological piece that if you could get the 30-year fixed at high fives, then maybe that spurs more buyers into the market where they can kind of justify the monthly payment a little bit more if they're sitting at under 6%. I'm also pretty happy. I think my mortgage predictions that we did at the beginning of this year have it somewhere between 7% and 5.85. So if I could just get that would help
between
me win
5.85 and 7. Come on, we're allowed to have 2.5% ranges on these guesses.
Look at what were the guesses, Tucker? What did they say for 30-year ranges?
Mine made no sense. I remember that my prediction was just gobbledygook nonsense.
Yeah, Paul, you had low 5.85, high 7.1. Chuck had 5.2, 7.8 high.
Just call me Nostradamus.
And Mike had whatever was now, which was back in December of 24, and a low of 6.5.
Oh, well, I was way off there. We're already at 6.25. But that said, I didn't decide to use a 3% swing on my mortgage prediction rate. So nonetheless, you're looking like you might win that one, Paul. That's the answer to me. Yes, you will have a bunch of refinancing activity at these rates because there are a bunch of people with 7% mortgages right now. And so I think they'll be more than happy to refinance into a 6.25 or 6% right now. The fact of the matter, that is not a huge generator of economic activity.
No.
It's a bit of a generator, right? Because if you finance down from 7 to 6, you are saving a lot on that monthly payment, and you can go blow that on. I don't know what's the trendy thing to Labubus. Is that a thing?
What?
Labubus?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
You don't know what I'm talking about?
No
idea.
I don't think anybody does, actually.
Hold on, Labubu.
Sure, yeah. We'll wait.
Just wait a second.
What? Can you describe the item?
Labubu.
What is this?
Is a popular character and line of collectible blind box toys created by Hong Kong artist Kassing Lung that are sweeping the nation right now of 9 and 7-year-old girls.
Oh my God!
So
that's what you do with your housing excess cash.
So everybody's going out there and buying Labubus would be my guess when it comes to all of
these things.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I think a famous tennis player had one on her tennis bag, and it made.
I thought you were gonna go with spend money to redo the porch or
nope.
the
just a whole bunch of probably these Labubus and then those rubber ducks that everybody likes to put on their Jeeps these days or other people's Jeeps.
Don't get me started on
I
that.
don't know how that works, but I'm glad I'm not part of that.
These
universe.
Wranglers driving around with
300 rubber ducks
just covering their dashboard for some stupid reason. The whole thing with the Wranglers and
Paul's looking like he has no idea what he's talking about.
I've kind of seen the ducks thing, but I didn't know where that stems from. Is it like a TikTok prank thing?
No, it's a Jeep thing. I don't know what the camaraderie is with Jeeps and waving to each other. When
your car breaks down every 3,000 miles, you have to have a community to surround you on what to do when these things happen.
My wife has a Jeep Compass, and I see people waving to me all the time. And
when
I'm like, don't
when
wave
your
to me.
beautiful Italian car breaks down,
wave not accepted.
Jeep ducking. I did not know this is a thing.
Well, I'm glad we got to cover it on this Friday. Let's take a quick break. When we do come back, I want to talk one more time about the labor market. We've been talking a lot about labor hoarding this year. Employers not quite willing to leave their employees unwilling to jump ship and go somewhere else. Quick break. Labor hoarding's next on the Financial Exchange.
Text us 617-362-1385 with your comments and questions about today's show. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network. New Englanders love the Caribbean, and now there's a Caribbean travel channel available for you to learn all about Caribbean culture while you're planning your next trip to your favorite island. The TravelShare.com marketplace is loaded with information about the arts, festivals, food, and music throughout the Caribbean, and is an interactive website featuring daily travel deals to any island of your choice. Book your next Caribbean vacation on the most comprehensive travel channel for the islands, TravelShare.com. That's TravelShare.com.
This is Michael Valila, Adjutant of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. We focus on the people returning from service, not their specific illness or injury. Our number one goal is to make sure our veterans have the necessary services they need, be it physical, emotional, or financial, so that their transition can be seamless. You can help our great American heroes as well by making a donation today by visiting dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
Your retirement savings and life insurance benefits are more than numbers. They're part of the legacy you've worked hard to build. And with the right plan, you can help protect them for the people you love. This month's free guide from Cushing & Dolan, IRA and life insurance planning, estate tax strategies, and nursing home protection shows how naming your estate the beneficiary of your IRA or life insurance can help reduce estate taxes and protect assets from nursing home costs, and still give your spouse access when it's needed most. It's a straightforward strategy that can provide lasting benefits for you and your family. You'll learn how this approach can fit into your overall estate plan and why it may offer more flexibility than other options. Get your free copy today by calling 866-848-5699. That's 866-848-5699. Or request the guide online right now at LegalExchangeShow.com. The proceeding was paid for, and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.
Artificial intelligence is changing the way companies invest and how markets move. Add to that global trends like international outperformance, a weakening dollar, and shifting bond yields, and you've got a complex landscape for investors. This is Mike Armstrong from the Armstrong Advisory Group, and we're hosting 2 financial seminars this fall to help you understand what it all means. Join us at Margaritaville Resort, Cape Cod on October 9th, or at the Showcase Superlux in Chestnut Hill on October 16th. Call 800-393-4001 to reserve your seat. We'll talk about how diversification and preparation may help you navigate uncertainty so your plan is ready. Don't miss this chance to get a clearer picture of your financial future. Register today by calling 800-393-4001 or on our website, armstrongadvisory.com.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services.
Here at the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, we are committed to all students not only attending, but succeeding at school. Your presence is powerful. Share why you attend at doe.mass.edu.
Sponsored by the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education.
Let's talk LDL. AKA bad cholesterol. The higher your LDL cholesterol, the higher your risk of a heart attack or stroke. Your health matters. Know your number. Talk to your doctor and get your cholesterol checked. And learn how to help lower your LDL bad cholesterol. Because your health is in your hands. Find out more at heart.org/LDL.
The Financial Exchange Show podcast drops every day on Apple, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Hit that subscribe button and leave us a 5-star review. You're listening to the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
Connor Sen from Bloomberg is out with an opinion piece on labor hoarding. So let's talk about that first before we get any further, Paul. There is compelling data that would indicate that labor turnover of any sort has been way down. You take a look at quits rates, at firing rates. All of these things are pretty low, and I think that helps explain the low unemployment rate. how would I explain why this is the case? I think that generally speaking, companies' financials have been in relatively good shape over the last few years. They haven't been pressured to lay people off. On the hiring side, though, they've been kind of taking a wait-and-see approach when it comes to things like tariffs and artificial intelligence and how those technologies are going to work out and change their hiring plans, and how, rather, tariff policy is going to change those hiring plans. And so it's been in a place where, hey, our stock price is doing okay. We have enough profit to continue to pay wages, but we're not going to offer big bonuses or increases because we just don't feel like we need to at this stage. What does Connor lay out as an argument for why that might be coming to an end or changing here? I don't know that I see a ton of really compelling evidence here, but he makes a few points about the state of the labor market.
Yeah, I think that some of the factors that you have in place is the labor supply is something that you have to consider here too, that perhaps where there's not going to be as robust of a supply of people looking for positions, that further re-emphasizes that point of just keeping the people that you have on staff. But he does make the argument that the scenario could come to pass that you would start firing some of the older workers to take advantage of the new up-and-coming, the cheap up-and-comers. I don't think it's to that point yet, but we've talked about how the college graduate market in terms of new jobs was very weak this year. Do you go through two cycles of this where we have another, range of graduations come in May of 26, and you get through two cycles where you have a bunch of young people looking for work, and all of a sudden bringing them on at, 50, 60K looks a lot more enticing than paying more for that senior person.
That was my first role right out of college during the Great Recession. It was not made explicit to me during the hiring process, but within my first few weeks there, I was getting a vibe and then an explicit comment from somebody about how I, effectively replaced somebody that was making over $100,000 just a few years ago and got laid off during the recession, and, hired little old college grad Mike for probably half of what they were paying that person to do, 90% of the same job. And so I do find that piece compelling. There is a large cohort of 20-something-year-olds that are looking for white-collar work in particular, not finding it. On the other end, you've got these companies that are holding on to employees who are getting older every year. And so if in the event of any sort of financial pressure, I can see a compelling case for why they would go on a layoff spree and then a rehiring of those younger employees. But I do think there has to be some form of financial pressure. I don't think it's just automatic. I don't think that employers oftentimes just sit there and say, yeah, let's conduct a few thousand layoffs just for the sake of saving, a few bucks on labor. I don't think that's usually how it works out.
No, tactically, it's not something. You know what I was reading about recently with the Japanese labor market? I had no idea this was a concept. With older workers there, they just sunset them to just work at a desk with a window and no files in front of them and keep them on as employees and still pay them just for respect for the elderly. And then they just...
We take the opposite approach here.
Give them more work.
Give them more work and then fire them.
Yeah,
fire them right as
it's
they
the reverse
need health insurance.
I could not believe it. It's literally like George Costanza, where they just have him with the Penske file, and these people don't even have files. But anyway, I digress there. It does seem like the layoff piece is something that companies turn to as a last resort. Rather, you've seen the tactical moves of an Amazon, and many others have followed the same procedure too of, hey, everyone come back into the office 5 days a week, no more remote work. If you don't like it, you can leave. And that's been an easier way to kind of force people out to a certain path to leave that position rather than doing the traditional layoff measure.
One other piece on the labor market that I was at a conference earlier this week. I wasn't doing the radio program. I wasn't working. I was, speaking to other financial professionals. And at all of these things, they always do all sorts of demographic surveys and try to tell you about different generations because, again, it's a survey. It's a financial advisor conference. They want to tell you about that next generation and how you're going to bring them on as clients. And they came up with a bunch of stuff that it reminds me exactly of how everybody was describing millennials last time. This time it was, they're really not tied down to a specific location or job. They like the idea of being able to hop around. They don't look at the workforce as the way that we used to traditionally, where you would work for an employer long term. And I don't know. To me, that reminded me exactly of all the millennial stuff. Like, oh, they don't want to own homes. They wanted the flexibility of renting forever. And then guess what? Millennial home ownership is exactly where it was for their parents' generation by their mid-30s. And so a lot is going to be said about these, Gen Zers and where they are going to work into the labor force and what they want. And I think my answer is don't listen to surveys about that generation and how different they are, because generation after generation has proven that they just aren't all that different. They do want to own homes. They do want stable careers that pay them good benefits. And once they realize that and, aren't, look, at 22, I wanted to go travel the world and only work for an employer 9 months of the year too. And then I quickly realized how impractical that is and realized that I needed to get a job. So I just take all of that with a grain of salt, and I would encourage everybody else to as well, because I just don't buy some of these trends.
No, there's always these concepts on the fringes that you hear about, like ones you just mentioned about flexibility and not owning a home and things like that. But I don't think that represents the overwhelming majority. Maybe they're right. Maybe there is a uptick in those people who feel that way, but still at the crux of it, the majority of the generation ends up falling to similar trends for the most part.
Folks, we have markets again touching near all-time highs here. We have seen a pretty dramatic shift in the way interest rates are likely to be headed over the course of the next few months. And for many, the economy seems to be at some sort of turning point. If you are staring down this market and scratching your head or just wondering what comes next, I'd like to talk to you about two events that we at the Armstrong Advisory Group are putting on. One of them is going to be down on Cape Cod, the other one in Chestnut Hill, Massachusetts. The first is at the Margaritaville Resort. It's on October 9th. The second down at the Showcase Superlux in Chestnut Hill on October 16th. Both of them will be doing a live broadcast of this show, The Financial Exchange, followed by a seminar from the Armstrong Advisory Group. Join us for lunch. We'll be talking about all things markets, economy, and what it means for your financial strategy. If you want more information, there's a ton of it online at armstrongadvisory.com. There's a little banner right at the top that gives you details on the event. You can sign up there too, but space is limited for these events. Again, there's two of them, one on October 9th, the second on October 16th. If you're going to be in the area and you want to catch a live version of the show and chat with us after, call us at 800-393-4001. Check us out at armstrongadvisory.com/events. But that number, once again, 800-393-4001.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services.
As we head here to the top of the hour, we've got an incredibly boring stock market as we close things out here. The Dow is off 148 points, or 1/3 of 1%. The S&P 500 up 6 points, less than 1/10 of 1%. And the NASDAQ seeing a little bit of move to the upside here, up 102 points, nearly 0.5% in the trading so far today. The yield on the 10-year Treasury, a main driver of mortgage rates and other types of loans, back up over 4% after dipping below there over the course of the last few days, sitting at 4.064%. And oil moving up a little bit on risk of Russian output, up 1.5% in early trading. We got a lot more to cover in the second hour here, folks. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Are you over the age of 50? Want peace of mind and financial security for your family? Here's an important message to you from Senior Care USA. The average funeral now costs over $10,000. That leaves your loved ones the burden of paying your debts and funeral costs. Our plans start as low as $1 per day and will pay your family up to $30,000 to help pay for your funeral and other expenses. There are no medical exams, your rates will never increase, and your plan cannot be canceled, regardless of of your medical conditions as long as you make your premium payments. Get up to $30,000 in final expense insurance. Call now for free information. Just answer a few simple questions and get approved right over the phone in just a few minutes. Call right now.
Call 800-378-3818. 800-378-3818. 800-378-3818. That's 800-378-3818.
Did you outgrow your timeshare and now you want out? But you can't. You can't sell it, and you can't get out of the contract. Imagine trying to get out of your mortgage. That's what a timeshare is. You can't just call up the bank and say, I don't want to pay it anymore. But we may be able to help you do just that. Listen, a timeshare maybe for you once was a great thing, but now you don't use it much. And they are not easy to get rid of. Plus, you do have to pay for it every month. Qualified timeshare owners can get out of their contract legally and permanently without ruining your credit or even filing bankruptcy. And imagine, no more mortgage payment or fees. Call the Timeshare Exit Hotline qualification line now. It's free to learn more.
800-455-7967. 800-455-7967. 800-455-7967. That's 800-455-7967. Paid for by Timeshare Defense. Hey, listen, are you a 50-year-old person looking for term life insurance? Then you need to talk to Bob. Bob specializes in helping people find $1 million or more of term life insurance for a couple of $100 a month. Look, you need to know there's a price war in the term life insurance business, and you may be paying too much. Call Bob, and he'll shop and see how much money he can save you. Look, this could be the last term life insurance policy you ever have. Your rates are guaranteed for the next 20 years. That's right, guaranteed level rates for the next 20 years. And if you're a smoker or your health is not perfect, Bob has great rates for you too. So for $1 million of term life insurance coverage for a couple of $100 a month, call Bob right now. 800-965-7987. 800-965-7987. 800-965-7987. That's 800-965-7987. Paid for by Term Direct.
This is the Money Matters Radio Network, WBNW 1120 AM and W275 CM FM. Concord, Boston, the Money Matters Radio Network.
As a busy mom to 4 kids, my to-do list is full.
Trying to fit in exercise, eating right, and prioritizing self-care can feel next to impossible.
While we can't add more hours to the day, we do have a great resource to help.
Go Red for Women has easy tips, tools, and information to help you and your family live a healthier life.
So to all the moms, the aunts, grandmothers, and amazing women out there doing it all,
visit goredforwomen.org/momlife today.
You take care of them, Go Red for Women will take care of you.
This fall, why just watch the leaves change when you could watch the sunset over turquoise waters? The U.S. Virgin Islands are your perfect fall escape. Set sail on the sparkling blue sea, snorkel colorful reefs, kayak through calm lagoons, or try to reel in the big one with world-class sport fishing. Then, explore Charlotte-Amalie, the capital of St. Thomas, with its historic streets and duty-free shopping. Ferry to St. John's Virgin Islands National Park for hiking and secluded beaches. And finally, experience the culture, festivals, and rum of St. Croix. 3 incredible islands, countless experiences, and something for everyone to enjoy. With easy travel from New England, no passport required for U.S. citizens, and no money to exchange, paradise is closer than you think. So why wait? This can be the season you fall naturally in rhythm with the heartbeat of the islands in America's Caribbean. The U.S. Virgin Islands. Plan your getaway now at visitusvi.com. That's visitusvi.com.
Mark Vonner is the CEO of Veterans Development Corporation. Mark is a career military man, having served for nearly 20 years, and we are so thrilled to have him and his company as a key partner and the presenting sponsor of the DAV 5K Boston. Mark comes from a proud military family, including his father Victor and his brother Timmy. Mark talks often about how serving his country was one of the greatest achievements of his life, and that's one of the key reasons that he chooses to give back to this special community. Mark is honored to continue his legacy that his father started when he built Veterans Development Corporation. Working to help many disabled veterans and their families has become a lifelong goal for Mark, and it's why he's taken the time to fully support the DAV Department of Massachusetts. You can join Mark Vonner and Veterans Development Corporation and help our great American heroes today by making a donation or becoming a sponsor. Simply visit dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
This month's free guide from Cushing & Dolan is called IRA and Life Insurance Planning, Estate Tax Strategies and Nursing Home Protection. Learn how naming your estate a beneficiary can reduce estate taxes, protect assets from nursing home costs, and avoid the 5-year Medicaid waiting period. Call 866-848-5699 to get your free guide today, or request it online at LegalExchangeShow.com. The proceeding was paid for, and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and/or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.
Hi, this is Chuck and Mike from the Armstrong Advisory Group, and we've got a guide available this month on the topic of inflation and your retirement plan. Mike, a lot of people listening might be familiar with the idea of the Consumer Price Index, the CPI, but rare is it that we find someone whose own personal rate of inflation exactly matches the CPI consistently.
Of course, we all have different spending habits. We all live in different parts of the country and have different effects of inflation. But I think a great example here, Chuck, is during a large portion of the 2010s decade, CPI was relatively in control and people got very little in the way of increases on their Social Security. However, healthcare inflation was pretty hot, and Medicare prices went up pretty dramatically during that period of time. And that is one area that dramatically affects retirees that doesn't play into CPI all that much and resulted in people seeing their Social Securities just not growing a whole lot during that 2010 decade. And so you really do have to evaluate the risk of, hey, here are my spending categories, and how might things like changes to the labor market or changes to energy markets, if I live here in the Northeast and I can't get natural gas and I'm instead relying on oil prices, how could those changes really affect my future finances?
Folks, our guide this month is titled Inflation in Your Retirement Plan, and the way to request it is by calling 800-393-4001. You can also request it online at armstrongadvisory.com. The guide again is Inflation in Your Retirement Plan, and that phone number to call is 800-393-4001.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services. The Financial Exchange is produced by Money Matters Radio and is hosted by employees of the Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. All opinions expressed are solely those of the hosts, do not reflect the opinions of Armstrong Advisory or anyone else. Investments can lose money. This program does not offer any specific financial or investment advice. Please consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong Advisory and the advertisers heard on this program do not endorse each other or their services. Armstrong and Money Matters Radio do not compensate each other for referrals and are not affiliated. This is the Financial Exchange with Mike Armstrong and Paul Lane. Your exclusive look at business and financial news affecting your day, your city, your world. Stay informed and up to date about economic and market trends, plus breaking business news every day. The Financial Exchange is a proud partner of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. Help us support our great American heroes by visiting dav5k.boston and making a donation today. This is the Financial Exchange with Mike Armstrong and Paul Lane.
Good morning. Happy Friday. Welcome back to the Financial Exchange. It's Mike, Paul, and Tucker with you on a Friday here, still digesting this week's CPI report that came out just yesterday with hotter than expected numbers. We're going to be joined in just 10 to 15 minutes by Michael Santoli from CNBC, later in the program by Paul LaMonica from Barron's as well for their takes on where this market and economy stands. But before we get there, the labor market continuing to have this overall shift, and just were talking about the practice of labor hoarding and where that situation could be going next. The other piece to all of this is the remote work shift. And to me, they surprisingly kind of go hand in hand. But the argument from some has been, look, the situation in the labor market has been one of employers wanting to hold on to their employees out of some sense of desperation, out of some sense of not willing to see change. And that's meant a number of things, including a lot of folks working from home. I guess my question would be, Paul, if we start to see a younger demographic getting employed, does the shift in work from home start to change as well? To be clear here, the share of U.S. workers who were primarily working from home last year was 13.3%. That's about double where it was in 2019, about 2.3 times higher. The percentage of workdays spent at home is now 3.8 times higher than it was in 2019. So that speaks to just the hybrid piece. There's twice as many people working full-time from home, nearly 4 times as many people working home occasionally compared to where we were in 2019. And that's had big changes for not so much I guess everybody. It's had big changes for businesses in terms of how they do business. I immediately go to the big changes for municipalities who were used to a whole boatload of tax revenue coming from...
Just ask the city of Boston.
Yeah, I mean, the revenue that the city of Boston, for example, would raise from taxes on commercial properties, specifically the high-rise office buildings, has taken a massive hit, and frankly, it's front and center when it comes to the upcoming mayoral race. Yep. And it is an issue that is everywhere, but it concentrates and depends city to city. I tend to think, though, that if we end up seeing, I don't think it's going to be a quick trend, but the argument here in this article from Bloomberg is that we've now settled into this rate of work from home and it's not going to change. And I don't know that I agree. I think that if you start to have more baby boomers retiring over the course of the next couple of years who have largely been working hybrid or fully remote. My wife isn't a baby boomer. She's a millennial like I am, but she works in the office one week and works from home the next week. A 22-year-old might not want to do that. Most 22-year-olds that I know have, well, at least when I was 22, I was sharing an apartment with 5 other guys. I had no interest in working remotely. You don't think so? I'm wrong?
Man. Yeah, they'd want to work from home. Yeah.
Huh. Are there employers willing to?
Okay, think about the irresponsible 22 or 23-year-old that might go out on a Thursday night and on Friday they might want to be working remotely. Not like I know anyone like that. You'd much be rather hidden in the shadows working remotely in some of those instances. And I think the post-college thing in general, they wouldn't be opposed to it.
So are the employers going to be willing then?
That is the better question to me, is that if the labor, and I've said this before, I thought that it would shift more back towards the employer court of more people would be in the office if the labor market were to weaken substantially. Like if you saw an unemployment rate of 5 or 6%, then the employer would have all the muscle in the world to flex to say, no, you're going to come into the office because if you don't like it, you can leave. And oh, by the way, it's a really bad labor market that you're about to thrust yourself into if you don't want to play.
That's what JP Morgan did.
Yeah, they
seemed to work pretty well.
But I don't think as a whole the labor market's at that point where you can make that shift. I think ultimately that I agree with your point that these things move in cycles. I'm not so sure that the prevalence, I don't think the prevalence of remote work, the hybrid structure, I think it's more ingrained, but that doesn't mean if the labor market were to shift to a really bad period that it could just be everyone's back in the office again and maybe that flexibility is gone. I could go either way on it though. Yeah. It does seem like hybrid is just so prevalent that most companies are okay with that.
Willing to do it. Yeah. I don't know. Were I trying to train up a 22-year-old, I wouldn't be okay with it. But I guess, it depends on place to place and where folks are feeling comfortable. The piece of all of the employment situation that is not really up for debate is costs around healthcare about to shoot upwards as they've been increasing generally, but what we're about to see next year is going to be a little bit nuts. Employers are expecting that they will need to pay almost 9% more per employee on average for healthcare benefits in 2026 compared to 2025. That would be the biggest price increase in 15 years, according to a new study by Mercer. 59% of those employers told Mercer that they plan to pass those higher prices right along to their workers in the form of cost-cutting changes. So rather than saying, hey, you have to pick up a bigger share of this total, they're just going to increase deductibles, copays, other out-of-pocket expenses in order to keep those net prices to the employer similar. And this is one of those scenarios that gets tricky to even talk about because everybody wants to point a finger and say this is what is causing all of these blow-ups in healthcare expenses, when the reality is there is a lot of blame to go around here, and it's a pretty tricky scenario. I don't think it's a good thing that we have the most expensive healthcare in the country, in the world. The United States spends more on healthcare per person than any other country in the world. But I'm also not sure it's terribly surprising. We are one of the most expensive countries to live in the world. We top that list in a number of different categories, and so I'm not shocked by that reality. In terms of the causes that are being pointed at here, one is employers. Mm-hmm. Employers are basically saying, we're going to be keeping our cost structure the same regardless of what these health insurance providers levy on us. So you, employee, are going to end up bearing a larger portion of that overall cost. So employers are to blame. Health insurance companies are most certainly to blame. And that culminated in a deranged person killing a United Healthcare CEO last year, and then a bunch of the world applauding him, which was just, I don't need to get into that. So yeah, there's some blame there, but you think about, if we're talking about the cost control side of things, the thing that makes people angry at health insurance companies is not how expensive they are. The thing that makes them angry are the denials, right, which they're doing to try and control costs. And then finally, you have the pharmacy benefit managers who have raised prices a lot too, and the drugs have gotten better. We've got to take a quick break. Michael Santoli from CNBC joins us next here on the Financial Exchange.
The Financial Exchange is live on SiriusXM's Business Radio Channel 132, weekdays from 11 to noon. Get the latest business and financial news from across the country and around the world, and keep up to date on how it might affect your wallet. That's the Financial Exchange, weekdays from 11 to noon on SiriusXM's Business Radio Channel 132. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
Are you wondering where the economy is headed? GDP is growing, but tariffs, inflation, and job numbers are making headlines. Interest rates, housing costs, and policy changes are impacting all of us. Even AI is changing how markets move. Hi, this is Chuck Zada from the Armstrong Advisory Group. We're hosting 2 financial seminars this fall to help you make sense of it all. Join us at Margaritaville Resort, Cape Cod on October 9th or at the Showcase Superlux in Chestnut Hill on October 16th. To reserve your seat, call 800-393-4001. We'll break down the economic trends, market risks, and smart strategies you need to plan for retirement and beyond. Diversification, preparation, and smart decisions are several of the keys to navigating uncertainty. Register today by calling 800-393-4001 or on our website, armstrongadvisory.com.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services. Every dollar you've saved in retirement accounts and life insurance tells a story of hard work, smart choices, and the future you envision for your family. One way to help that story end well is to make a beneficiary choice that does more. This month's free guide from Cushing & Dolan, IRA and Life Insurance Planning, Estate Tax Strategies, and Nursing Home Protection explains how naming your estate as the beneficiary of your IRA or life insurance can add a layer of tax efficiency and nursing home protection, while still allowing your spouse access when it matters. It's about keeping more of what you've built working for your loved ones now and in the years to come. Get your free copy today by calling 866-848-5699. That's 866-848-5699. Or you can request it online from our website, LegalExchangeShow.com. The proceeding was paid for, and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and/or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.
Mark Vonner is the CEO of Veterans Development Corporation. Mark is a career military man, having served for nearly 20 years, and we are so thrilled to have him and his company as a key partner and the presenting sponsor of the DAV 5K Boston. Mark comes from a proud military family, including his father Victor and his brother Timmy. Mark talks often about how serving his country was one of the greatest achievements of his life, and that's one of the key reasons that he chooses to give back to this special community. Mark is honored to continue his legacy that his father started when he built Veterans Development Corporation. Working to help many disabled veterans and their families has become a lifelong goal for Mark, and it's why he's taken the time to fully support the DAV Department of Massachusetts. You can join Mark Vonner and Veterans Development Corporation and help our great American heroes today by making a donation or becoming a sponsor. Simply visit dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
Environmental nonprofit Ocean River Institute is working with communities to tackle climate change with nature-based solutions that feature slowing water down and building more soil with grasses and plants. Research indicates that people acting in their own neighborhoods can build an inch of soil in a year and slow sea level rise down by as much as 25%. Please visit oceanriver.org for more information on opportunities to make a difference and go the distance for savvy stewardship of a greener and bluer planet Earth.
Sometimes we know what's next. Other times, it's impossible to know. Life can change in an instant. Don't be caught standing by the next time someone's heart stops. Knowing CPR gives you the ability to act and takes you from bystander to lifesaver. CPR is a life-saving skill. Join the nation of lifesavers today by learning CPR at heart.org/nation. National support for CPR education provided by Elevance Health Foundation.
Text us at 617-362-1385 with your comments and questions about today's show, and let us know what you think about the stories we are covering. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
Joining us now is CNBC's Michael Santoli for a look at markets hitting their all-time highs and next week's Fed meeting. Mike, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, glad to. Thank you very much.
Let's start right there with the Federal Reserve. We've got a meeting next week. It looks pretty baked for a 25 basis point rate cut. Do you think there's any chance of a 50?
I don't think there's a significant chance of a 50. Basically, all the data we'd have that they'll be working with next week is in hand. You also probably don't. You would be unusual for the market to be priced for 25 this close to a meeting. And have them not at least have made an effort to try and sway the market another way. So I wouldn't foreclose on the possibility as a whole. It really depends on which of the members decides to kind of migrate from, still being vigilant on inflation to saying, look, the recent labor market data has been so weak that we need to kind of double up and get ahead of it. It's somewhat similar to what happened last year, actually. They did not do a July rate cut as many thought they would as the unemployment rate ticked higher. And then in September, they did what they characterized as a catch-up move of 50. I don't know that whatever happens is going to change the overall total for, let's say, the rest of the year of, let's say, 0.75 percentage point.
I don't know that this changes the markets or the narrative at all, but what's been interesting the last couple meetings are the defections. You rarely see them. Generally speaking, the 12 Fed members vote all together. The last two, you've seen defections. Is it possible you get defections to both directions this time, right? Some calling for a larger cut and some calling to keep rates steady at this next meeting?
I think you have to consider it a possibility. I think in the end, those wanting any kind of cut would probably line up behind, whatever the majority decides and not necessarily decide to dissent because of the magnitude of a cut. But it's hard to know. But I think even the discussion tells us what juncture we're at right now when, in theory, you're kind of short of your target on both unemployment and on inflation, at least a little bit. And so that sort of creates a little bit of a back and forth.
So with that context in mind, what did we learn new about the jobs market and the prices that we're all paying at the grocery store and everywhere else this week?
I think we're at a fascinating spot because inflation, broadly speaking, is kind of stuck around these levels. Let's call it between 2.5% and 3% on an annual basis. That's not really changing. You're not seeing a huge rush of tariff-related inflation, but you're seeing it in some core goods sectors. And then just in general, the labor market data has really turned pretty soggy, but now there's also a lot of these folks wanting to rationalize by saying, it's labor supply, you're having immigration crackdowns, demographics. So I think there's a lot of room for play in that. What I do know is the markets for the last month have been betting on rate cuts that we're going to get, but we may not really need because the underlying economy seems okay, especially outside of the labor market data. Now, labor market data is really important, but there's a chance that it's not fully reflecting the pace of underlying economic activity, whether that's because wealthy are still spending, because companies are throwing money at capital expenditures, or all the rest. But it does seem like the markets are priced for that kind of nirvana scenario where we get lower borrowing rates, and it's not because we have an emergency in the economy.
By most accounts, the Fed kind of missed the ball when it came to inflation 3 years ago. They were late to the game by most accounts in terms of raising interest rates. They created a taboo around the word transitory when it came to inflation. Right. Is there a chance they're missing the ball on this one again, right? They clearly seem much more concerned about the labor market right now than they do inflation. What could cause them to be off on all the cut off sides on this one once again?
There's no doubt that they believe, at least most people on the committee believe, there is a chance that they could be caught off again. Okay. And there's these examples from history. In the late 60s, this happened. They started easing. Things were okay for a while. Then the economy overheated. It became a big inflation problem. I do think that they have a little bit of room to play with here, though, because by their numbers, they remain, let's say, 1 percentage point in terms of where short-term rates are above what they consider neutral. So I think they can kind of tell themselves, look, we're just adjusting the rates to be a little bit less restrictive given the underlying inflation rates and source of growth in the economy. And so until we get to closer to neutral, we don't necessarily have to worry about really that we're gunning the economy and letting it overheat. We'll see if that really holds up. These models are obviously not precise. But I think that's where they end up landing.
Regardless of what the Fed does next, the AI mania and a little bit of IPO mania now continues. We saw Oracle stock pop earlier this week. Last couple of days been retracting a lot of that, down about 5% in early trading so far, or today so far. What's your take on the Oracle move and just, it is a little bit strange to see such a big pop and then an immediate pullback for a very mature company that's now entering into the mainstream narrative when it comes to AI.
Right. Almost 50-year-old company, was considered kind of old legacy boring tech. They've certainly refashioned themselves as basically an enabler, an outsourcer for a lot of this AI data center work. Now, you did have a massive move higher in the stock, I think because just the magnitude of their forward revenue guidance was so enormous. What it tells me is the entrenched players, in terms of trying to build out AI infrastructure, are in a phase of desperate urgency. And so they're so pot committed that they're just going to keep ramping what they think they need in terms of building capacity. That's going to benefit those in the direct line of all that spending. That includes Oracle, though maybe it's kind of low margin business for them. It includes all the semiconductor companies. Obviously, NVIDIA's already gotten its huge bump from that. What it doesn't tell you is whether this is going to be over investment in the end, and whether in fact it's going to be a winner-take-most type of a platform or an environment where a lot of the spending ends up looking redundant or ill-conceived in the end. We simply don't know that. What we know is the numbers are massive. OpenAI, which seems the source of much of the Oracle revenue guidance boost, still has to raise money to do this, right? It's not in the days of Microsoft's got the money in their pocket to just spend on it. So it's a different phase of this AI story.
I agree that we don't know, Michael, but gosh, when you talk about companies as old as Oracle getting bid up on being the underlying infrastructure play for the latest and greatest technology, it is really tough to not make the comparisons to the late 1990s.
It's very true, because you know what you had back then was old telephone companies doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Old telephone companies, Nortel and Lucent, which was the old AT&T, Bell Labs type business, did in fact say, hey, we are building the broadband network of the world. We're the fiber companies, and they did it with debt to a large degree. That's sort of starting to be a debt financed aspect of the AI boom too. So it is similar. And, back then the logic was, look, the main constraint is we need broadband capacity, and that's going to enable all these wonderful things. It was true.
Yeah.
But the price of accessing that broadband crashed, and nobody really made money on it. It was all about the applications. Now, I don't know if we're in for something similar in terms of the AI part of it, but you can't rule it out.
Michael Santoli from CNBC joins us today to talk about the markets and next week's Fed meeting. Always appreciate it, Michael. Thanks so much, and have a great weekend.
You too. Thanks. Glad to do it.
All right, time for trivia here on the Financial Exchange. And on this day, back in 1981, the Smurfs made their North American TV debut. The Smurfs were wildly popular in their home country of Belgium and across Europe before coming to America. So, trivia question today. What is the name of the Smurfs' primary villain? Once again, what is the name of the Smurfs' primary villain? Be the fifth person today to text us at 617-362-1385 with the correct answer. You win a Financial Exchange Show t-shirt. Once again, the fifth correct response to text us to the number 617-362-1385 will win that t-shirt. See complete contest rules at financialexchangeshow.com.
I've got a new scam of the week here, Paul. Small businesses facing a new threat when it comes to reviews. Effectively, you'll get a message as a small business owner that pay up or we're going to start plastering your Google webpage and your Yelp page with garbage reviews. Wow. I don't know how you prevent that one.
That's a tough one to prevent.
It's a pretty good scam.
But a scummy thing to do.
Terrible thing to do. And a pretty good scam that a lot of people are probably going to pay up for. One example was given of an LA business that had a random WhatsApp message. Basically, I got an order to post 20 bad reviews of your business. Pay up or I'm going to do it. Ugh, good luck with that one. Quick break. Wall Street Watch is next.
Bringing the latest financial news straight to your radio every day. It's the Financial Exchange on the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
Hi, this is Mike Armstrong from the Armstrong Advisory Group. One of the biggest risks to retirement isn't just market volatility, it's longevity. People are living 25 to 30 years after they stop working, and that gives inflation plenty of time to work against you. At just 3% inflation, your expenses double in about 23 years. Add to that the fact that healthcare costs typically rise faster than general inflation, and your later years could be your most expensive. Without a plan, that combination can put real pressure on your savings. That's why we've put together a brand new guide called Inflation in Your Retirement Plan. The guide shows you ways to balance longevity risk with rising costs and strategies that may help you make your money last through decades of retirement. Call 800-393-4001 to get your free copy today. 800-393-4001, or you can request it online at armstrongadvisory.com.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services. This fall, why just watch the leaves change when you could watch the sunset over turquoise waters? The U.S. Virgin Islands are your perfect fall escape. Set sail on the sparkling blue sea, snorkel colorful reefs, kayak through calm lagoons, or try to reel in the big one with world-class sport fishing. Then, explore Charlotte Amalie, the capital of St. Thomas, with its historic streets and duty-free shopping. Ferry to St. John's Virgin Islands National Park for hiking and secluded beaches. And finally, experience the culture, festivals, and rum of St. Croix. 3 incredible islands, countless experiences, and something for everyone to enjoy. With easy travel from New England, no passport required for U.S. citizens, and no money to exchange, paradise is closer than you think. So why wait? This can be the season you fall naturally in rhythm with the heartbeat of the islands in America's Caribbean. The U.S. Virgin Islands. Plan your getaway now at visitusvi.com. That's visitusvi.com.
Mark Vonner is the CEO of Veterans Development Corporation. Mark is a career military man, having served nearly 20 years, and we are so proud to have him and his business as a key partner and a presenting sponsor of the DAV 5K Boston. The DAV Department of Massachusetts does incredible work, and it's one of the first organizations that Mark became familiar with after his military service ended back in 1984. As Mark built his company, he knew he'd be giving back to fellow veterans who needed jobs, support services, medical supplies, and so much more. Mark works with disabled veterans every day, and it's one of the key reasons why he's such a big supporter of Dan Stack, the DAV Department of Massachusetts, and the DAV 5K Boston. You can join Mark Vonner and his team and make a donation to the DAV Department of Massachusetts or become a sponsor of the DAV 5K Boston. Simply visit dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
This is Tucker Silva of the Financial Exchange Show, and I'm joined today by estate planning attorney Todd Lutzke, a partner with the law firm of Cushing & Dolan with a master's in taxation. And today we're talking about choosing beneficiaries for your IRA. Todd, what is the best way to set up designated beneficiaries for qualified plan assets from both a Medicaid and estate tax planning perspective for a married couple?
Generally, for a married couple, you have several choices. The most commonly used one is you're going to make the surviving spouse the designated beneficiary. It doesn't shelter assets from estate taxes. It just passes to the surviving spouse. It avoids probate, and it's probably the best way to go from an income tax perspective, not necessarily an estate tax perspective. Another way would be you could technically name the trust the beneficiary of the IRA when you pass. That at least will help it shelter assets for estate tax purposes and still provide for the surviving spouse. But from a Medicaid perspective, it will then protect it from the nursing home, but it'll take 5 years. Perhaps the newest and best way to do this would be to name the estate the beneficiary, provided you are over age 73 or over. That way, it goes through probate into the will. It is sheltered for estate taxes. It is immediately protected from the cost of long-term care for the surviving spouse, and the surviving spouse has access to it as well.
Educate yourself about the estate planning process. Request your free copy of Todd's brand new guide, Why Name Your Estate an IRA Beneficiary, right now by calling 866-848-5699. That's 866-848-5699. Or you can request a copy from their website, legalexchangeshow.com.
The proceeding was paid for, and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing and Armstrong do not endorse each other and are not affiliated. Time now for Wall Street Watch, a complete look at what's moving markets so far today, right here on the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
Markets are mixed after a week full of inflation and labor data ahead of the Fed's anticipated meeting on deck next week. Right now, the Dow is down by 0.4% or 204 points. S&P 500 completely flat. NASDAQ is up 0.4% or 88 points higher. Russell 2000 retreating 0.7%. 10-year Treasury yield up 6 basis points now at 4.08%, and crude oil up over 1.5% higher, trading at $63.39 a barrel. Big news in the media world after CNBC reported that Paramount Skydance was readying an offer for Warner Brothers Discovery. However, as of Thursday, Warner Brothers had yet to receive an offer, but a bid could come as soon as next week. Yesterday, Warner Brothers stock surged 28% on the news. Today, up another 14%. Meanwhile, shares in Supermicro Computer rising 3% after the AI tech firm announced it is now delivering equipment powered by NVIDIA's Blackwell Ultra technology in volume to customers. Elsewhere, OpenAI and Microsoft reached a deal to extend their partnership despite a summer of difficult negotiations. Microsoft is up by about 2%. Adobe raised its annual outlook for the second time this year after reporting better than expected quarterly results. That stock is flat at the moment. Furniture retailer RH trimmed its annual outlook as it struggles with higher tariff-related costs and uncertainty. That stock is down over 3% now. And Apple delayed the launch of its new iPhone Air in China, citing regulatory approval issues. Apple is up nearly 2% at the moment. I'm Tucker Silva, and that is Wall Street Watch. And in the previous segment, we asked you the trivia question. What is the name of the Smurfs' primary villain? That would be something called Gargamel. I don't know. I never watched the Smurfs. Rob from Pittsfield, Mass. is our winner today, taking home a Financial Exchange Show t-shirt. Congrats to Rob. We play trivia every day here in the Financial Exchange. See complete contest rules at financialexchangeshow.com.
Paul, you want to talk buy now, pay later or IPOs?
I want to talk about this IPO story because it's very puzzling to me.
Okay.
And I'll explain why. So basically what this IPO story is talking about how on recent public offerings for companies that are being publicly traded on our stock markets out there, typically the way that those broke out, it would be very difficult if you were a regular Joe Schmo like you and I to get access to buy shares of Facebook. I think about a famous one in 2012 when I started my career. Everyone wanted a piece of the Facebook IPO, and it's very hard to get. You had to go through institutions typically to get access to those types of offerings.
Yeah, the way this works, you typically go to an investment banker like Goldman Sachs, like JP Morgan. You say, I want to go public. I want you to sponsor the offering, or I want several companies to sponsor the offering. They will then take it to their clients. They will sell the shares to those clients who support the IPO, and then it becomes publicly traded. And that's part of the special access that you get by working with an investment bank.
And to further that even more, though, a lot of it gets concentrated in their mutual funds or their products, the share of those companies, because I'd worked at Merrill and Morgan, some of the wirehouses that would run deals, and you'd think being a client of the advisory firm, you get shares, you get just pittances. You get really small allocations to it. 50 shares of Facebook, doesn't move the needle for these high net worth clients. Anyway, the way it's transitioned now, a heavier and heavier percentage of IPOs are being allocated to individuals. And what strikes me as so puzzling about this piece in the Wall Street Journal is they're actually stating that the individual investors, the retail investors, are stabilizing the price of these IPOs, and it's the institutional funds.
Yeah, because they never sell. YOLO, baby.
I guess this diamond hands thing, to me, coming up through the industry, it was always retail is the dumb money, and they are the first ones to panic and jump out when things get rough. And that's usually what happens with IPOs. They pop really quickly when they come out of the gate, but then typically they're structured to have a 90-day lockup where the employees can't sell their shares, and after 90 days, they want to buy that house. They want to buy that vacation home. So they sell off their shares, causing a drawdown in the stock, which would be, in my mind, a reason for retail investors to get spooked and jump out. This, I guess, is
I don't think it's permanent, Paul. I don't think this is permanent. But I will say that since 2020, there has been a blow up in terms of the percentage of Americans and number of Americans that are interested in stock trading of one sort or another. And the trend line has been buy companies that we think are cool for some reason or another and never sell them, right? You think about some of these things that have occurred with other meme stock companies. It's been, nope, just, I don't, this isn't about making money. It's always about making money. But like they say, Roaring Kitty publicly said things like that.
Right.
Like, this is about something that I truly believe in. And I'm with you. I don't think that sticks. But if you can harness that moment in time as a new company, it builds a whole bunch of excitement about your stock.
Right.
Especially if you are a well-known company like a number of these have been recently, like Klarna, the buy now, pay later firm, then I can see what it does to benefit you by offering this out to the everyday retail investor as opposed to just going after your Goldman Sachs clients that have, by the way, probably never used buy now, pay later.
Sure.
If you are working with Goldman Sachs, my guess is you are not accessing buy now, pay later for most of your transactions.
No, it's
any of your transactions.
It's an interesting paradigm shift. I think all it takes is one bad market cycle to kind of wash that out, but
haven't gotten it yet.
For now, no.
Every dollar you've saved in retirement accounts and life insurance tells a story of hard work, smart choices, and the future you envision for your family. One way to help that story end well is to make a beneficiary choice that does more. This month's free guide from Cushing & Dolan is called IRA and Life Insurance Planning, Estate Tax Strategies, and Nursing Home Protection. It explains how naming your estate as the beneficiary of your IRA or life insurance can add a layer of tax efficiency and nursing home protection while still allowing your spouse access when it matters. It's about keeping more of what you've built working for your loved ones now and in the years to come. Get your free copy right now by calling 866-848-5699. That's the number for Cushing & Dolan. Again, 866-848-5699, or you can request it from their website, legalexchangeshow.com.
The proceeding was paid for and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing and Armstrong do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.
Wall Street Journal asked 4 people how they use buy now, pay later. Again, we're talking about this in the wake of Klarna's pretty big IPO that occurred this week. And we've both kind of scratched our heads. We're just slightly older than the typical buy now, pay later crowd, I think, Paul. And I've kind of wondered how it's being utilized, if it is really replacing credit card transactions or supplementing them in some way. In this case, Wall Street Journal interviewed 4 people in terms of how they're using it. And I have to say, I didn't find one of these that I thought was an intelligent use case of using buy now, pay later. It all seemed like... It didn't seem like they were all getting whacked with interest, but it seemed like it was increasing
robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Robbing Peter to pay Paul, or in some cases doing things that are kind of dangerous. Aaron Moncad, who they interviewed, who's a software engineer out in Seattle, says that he will oftentimes put things on buy now, pay later, and then take the cash that he can afford to buy the thing with and invest it in the stock market for those like 2 weeks in between the buy now, pay later, to which I would say that's probably worked out really well for you, but I don't even know. I would imagine the odds of the stock market going up over a 4-week time period is pretty close to a coin toss.
Mm-hmm.
You're probably coming out slightly ahead there, but the problem is if you go the other direction, then you're totally screwed.
Right.
If you miss one of these payments, you rack up all these fees, and you're basically saying, hey, let's take the money that I would have used to buy this item and just put it on black.
Right.
Again, better odds than putting it on black, but not by a lot. The other ones that are used are, hey, look, I put my discretionary stuff on this. I pay cash for my groceries and things like that. But all of them, the other stories, it just seemed to me like, hey, this is stuff that I wouldn't have bought if I had to pay cash. And because I can pay for it over 4 months, I'm willing to spend money that I don't really have.
I've never understood from the business case perspective as to why Klarna and others, why these are good businesses, because oftentimes, don't get me wrong, they're providing access to financing for people to purchase certain items, but on the credit score line of things, you're typically getting the lower credit score person, and in a time of financial upheaval, I just don't know how a company like this would weather a storm like that.
I don't think they would.
Yeah.
Again, we're in a good economy, and so they're making a lot of money, presumably, on companies paying for access to this, because that's where they're making their money is, the company that sold the mattress is paying for access to Klarna so that their customers can use it. But they're not going to repossess the mattress that you bought if you default on those payments, and so somebody would be left holding the bag at the end of the day.
Just doesn't seem like a super durable business to me, like some others would be. Even if they went through a downturn, you'd say, okay, I can see how they could pick back up.
Quick break. When we come back, Paul LaMonica from Barron's joins us next talking about Larry from Oracle. That's next on the Financial Exchange.
The Financial Exchange is now available every day from 11 to noon on SiriusXM's Business Radio Channel 132. Stay informed about the latest from Wall Street, fiscal policy, and breaking business news every day. The Financial Exchange is live on SiriusXM's Business Radio Channel 132. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
Mark Vonner is the CEO of Veterans Development Corporation. Mark is a career military man, having served for nearly 20 years, and we are so thrilled to have him and his company as a key partner and the presenting sponsor of the DAV 5K Boston. Mark comes from a proud military family, including his father Victor and his brother Timmy. Mark talks often about how serving his country was one of the greatest achievements of his life, and that's one of the key reasons that he chooses to give back to this special community. Mark is honored to continue his legacy that his father started when he built Veterans Development Corporation. Working to help many disabled veterans and their families has become a lifelong goal for Mark, and it's why he's taken the time to fully support the DAV Department of Massachusetts. You can join Mark Vonner and Veterans Development Corporation and help our great American heroes today by making a donation or becoming a sponsor. Simply visit dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
Your retirement savings and life insurance benefits are more than numbers. They're part of the legacy you've worked hard to build. And with the right plan, you can help protect them for the people you love. This month's free guide from Cushing & Dolan, IRA and life insurance planning, estate tax strategies, and nursing home protection shows how naming your estate the beneficiary of your IRA or life insurance can help reduce estate taxes and protect assets from nursing home costs, and still give your spouse access when it's needed most. It's a straightforward strategy that can provide lasting benefits for you and your family. You'll learn how this approach can fit into your overall estate plan and why it may offer more flexibility than other options. Get your free copy today by calling 866-848-5699. That's 866-848-5699. Or request the guide online right now at LegalExchangeShow.com. The proceeding was paid for and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated. This fall, why just watch the leaves change when you could watch the sunset over turquoise waters? The U.S. Virgin Islands are your perfect fall escape. Set sail on the sparkling blue sea, snorkel colorful reefs, kayak through calm lagoons, or try to reel in the big one with world-class sport fishing. Then, explore Charlotte Amalie, the capital of St. Thomas, with its historic streets and duty-free shopping. Ferry to St. John's Virgin Islands National Park for hiking and secluded beaches. And finally, experience the culture, festivals, and rum of St. Croix. 3 incredible islands, countless experiences, and something for everyone to enjoy. With easy travel from New England, no passport required for U.S. citizens, and no money to exchange, paradise is closer than you think. So why wait? This can be the season you fall naturally in rhythm with the heartbeat of the islands in America's Caribbean. The U.S. Virgin Islands. Plan your getaway now at visitusvi.com. That's visitusvi.com.
It happens all over Massachusetts. In every home and every community.
Be careful on your bike.
Learning can happen anytime, anywhere.
We'll see you at practice this weekend.
And no matter how learning takes place in your family's life, DESE is there as your partner. The Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Never stop learning. Find out more at mass.gov/back-to-school.
Sponsored by the Massachusetts Department for Elementary and Secondary Education.
Cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer of women,
taking the lives of 1 in 3.
That's more than all forms of cancer combined.
For too long, heart disease and stroke have taken the lives of the women we love.
But we're not giving up.
Because we have something better.
Stronger, more powerful.
We have each other.
When we come together and go red,
the more power we have against our greatest health threat.
Visit GoRedForWomen.org today to learn more.
The Financial Exchange streams live on YouTube. Subscribe to our page and stay up to date on breaking business news all morning long. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, the weekend.
This segment of the Financial Exchange brought to you by the U.S. Virgin Islands Department of Tourism. Looking for a getaway that's easy, warm, and unforgettable? Discover the magic of the U.S. Virgin Islands, St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John. Just a short flight from New England with no passport needed and no money to exchange. Soak up the sun, stroll along white sand beaches, and feel the rhythm of the heartbeat of the islands. The USVI is America's Caribbean paradise. Plan your fall escape now at visitusvi.com. That's visitusvi.com.
Joining us now is Paul LaMonica from Barron's. Happy Friday, Paul. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So let's start right off there with who was briefly the world's richest man on Wednesday of this week, Larry Ellison. I'm guessing with the stock price fall over the last 2 days, he's not still holding that title. But what did we see with Oracle stock, and what do you make of the big boom and then the kind of fall apart over the last couple of days that we've seen?
Yeah, last I checked, Larry Ellison is once again trailing Elon Musk a little bit, but I mean, I know you have to feel really badly for him, for both of them, for that matter. I mean, Oracle's earnings were not fantastic by the notion that they didn't really blow away earnings expectations for the quarter. It was the guidance and the outlook that really wowed everyone. That there's still all of this spending on on data centers, cloud, that really is boosting Oracle's revenue and profit growth expectations going forward, and there are reports of the multi-hundred-billion-dollar deal apparently that OpenAI might be working on with Oracle. So that is very significant. I think right now we are looking at a company where I'm not going to say shades of 99, 2000 just yet, because the valuation's not nearly as crazy as what you had with, say, Cisco in the late 90s.
Sure.
But if you look at what happened after earnings, Oracle was already a somewhat pricey stock, trading around 33 times forecast before their earnings report. After earnings, that PE went up to about 43. So that's a dramatic stretch in terms of what investors are willing to pay for this company based on the expectations of all this AI-related growth.
Paul, plenty of listeners probably weren't investing in the late 90s that are listening to us right now. So connect the dots for us. I mean, I see the connections here. It's a legacy tech company whose stock is being bid through the roof for providing infrastructure. What are the connections that you are seeing? What are the comparison points that you are seeing between today and the late 90s as these valuations continue to climb for not only NVIDIA, but the rest of the market as well?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the big difference now is that I'd say in the late 90s, investors were even more willing to accept the premise that the internet was going to be this revolution, which it turned out to be, and that companies, that were very sketchy, to put it mildly, didn't have great business models. Some of them didn't have revenue, let alone profits. It was back in the day where people were doing things, I'll still remember this stupid phrase, monetizing eyeballs. It was all about traffic. Now, I think you look at the companies that are getting bid up on AI expectations. You can call it hype if you want. Companies like NVIDIA and Oracle and Broadcom, and then the hyperscalers, Microsoft, Amazon, et cetera, there's real business there. I think the question is, when do the benefits of AI filter down to companies that are hoping to use AI to boost revenue and cut costs? I don't think we're there yet outside that handful of big tech companies. But the big tech companies dominate the market. Our stats team at Dow Jones just ran me some numbers. If you want to call them the Fine Nine or Cloud Nine, the Magnificent Seven plus Oracle and Broadcom, they now make up more than 40% of the S&P 500's market valuation. So in some respects, it's almost as if those other 490 companies, they don't really matter as much as long as NVIDIA, Oracle, et cetera, are continuing to do this well.
While we're on the subject of Larry Ellison and his wealth, his son David now taking and making his move in this Paramount Skydance potential Warner Brothers deal. What do you make of that, and what do you think of the combination?
Yeah, it's fascinating. As a former, very long-time CNN employee, I wish all of my former colleagues all the best with whatever happens. They've lived through many mergers before: AOL, Time Warner, AT&T, Warner Brothers Discovery. So, having a new parent, if that works out to be the case, wouldn't be new. But I don't think it's a coincidence that the speculation about this deal has really picked up steam days after Larry Ellison, David's father, became briefly the world's richest person. So it will be very interesting to see. I mean, Paramount Skydance is technically smaller than Warner Brothers Discovery, but the pockets are, I think, just a little bit deeper.
Paul LaMonica from Barron's joins today to talk about the Oracle stock pop and all the activity among the Ellison family this week. So thanks so much for joining us, Paul. Have a great weekend.
Thanks. You too, guys.
What do you have for us, Paul, for last story of the day?
Kodak is launching a vintage-style toy camera with strong sales. It's called the Charmera, I guess. Charmera. These are cameras that they're launching that are being sold in blind boxes, so consumers don't know what they get until they're buying it. But it has all the old vintage cameras from the 80s from Kodak.
But did they make them digital, or do you actually have to get
digital
film processed?
Yeah, it's a line of inspired digital toy cameras called the Kodak camera.
I bought my kids one of these for their summer camp. They're not allowed to have devices when they went to summer camp, but it was just a point-and-shoot digital camera that could store 1,000 pictures. I kind of like the idea.
I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
This reminds me of a story we covered where landlines are reminiscent,
making a comeback.
Comeback for kids,
Yeah.
so that you don't get them exposed to the wild world of smartphones.
Yeah, I like it as well.
Anything
of
to throw
course,
them
if
off
I
the
buy
scent.
one of these things, I'm going to be in company with tons of hipsters, and so I'm not sure I'll be able to pull it off. But nonetheless, good business idea. Quick break for the next 48 hours. We'll be right back at it on Monday, folks, for a Fed meeting week, so stay tuned. Have a great weekend.